I think if you look at the GNU, the problem has been between the ANC and the DA.
Yeah.
The other parties have not had a problem. I'm not going to say they've never had some sort of maybe disagreements and stuff, but I'm just saying the big two have been the problem here. The DA at some point wanted them to be just a coalition between the ANC and the DA, which they thought would be much better than involving all these parties. And there's an argument to say this is just a coalition between the DA and the ANC, and the other parties are just there.
Welcome back to Born Free. My name is Kumalo, and it's been a hot week, a hot couple of months in South Africa, whether it's been the budget. Well, it's only been the budget. Well, there isn't a budget. Otsile, Nkadimeng, how are you doing today?
I've been hot. Politically. Hey, physical environment, guys. I don't know how we're doing it. This is when you know you're living in Africa.
Yeah. And today we're joined with the Mail and Guardian and journalist, Lunga. How are you doing today?
Well, my brother, how are you?
No, I'm doing well. I want to start particularly at the moment where everything went wrong. Action SA. Because Action SA, Build One South Africa, in the financial committee make a change in turn in policy. Action SA says to South Africa that we'll never work with the ANC. It's the reason why they didn't join the GNU. And all of a sudden, out the blue, when the ANC seems like it's losing the plot, losing the hold on government, losing the hold on policy, Action SA comes out to save them. Deemed the kingmakers now at the end of, what was a proposed budget, which has now been retracted and is going to be proposed again. Why was that decision made? What particularly happened at that moment for South Africans to understand for why Action SA out of the blue decided that it was going to join the ANC and pass a budget with 0.5% VAT, which then became extremely controversial down the line?
Look, if you take politics personal, you are going to have a serious challenge because I can argue the same. Last year when all the parties were campaigning, it was to remove the ANC. But if you then look now, you look, for instance, in the Johannesburg Metro, Tshwane Metro, Action SA is working with the ANC, is working with the EFF. They're working together in these municipalities. You then go to national. The DA was campaigning to working against the ANC. They're working with the ANC in the GNU. So politically, that's why I say if you're going to take things personal, you're going to have a serious challenge. If then you go deeper into these relationships, I think at most of the time, being closer to power, it allows you as a political party to showcase on what you can basically give to the people or to those who vote for you. So it's a wide thing. I think would only be speculating to say why did Action vote with what did Action say vote with them, what the other parties voted for. But there has been an argument just out there that if you take away the issue of the VAT, the budget was good. A lot of these political parties actually agreed with it. That's what we are hearing. To say no, they agreed with it. Then you look at there was only one issue. So I wouldn't necessarily want to say or speculate on saying why did they choose to vote with the ANC. Yeah.
I think let's explore this VAT thing because, as you've said, it's been the most pressing issue from 2% to 0.5% to nothing. It's been an interesting development in South Africa because there's been different elements that have come to a play at the moment. There's civil society who said that they can't deal with the VAT increase. South African citizens are just being squeezed too much. Then there's the DA who said that they're trying to defend civil society. And I think this is a particularly interesting narrative when we look at how the negotiations have taken place because on both ends, with the DA and the ANC, there's been major accusations as to what's been happening. According to the DA, they believe that it's not fair for citizens to bear the burden of mismanagement of the ANC. And according to the ANC, it seems like the DA is negotiating about everything but VAT, actually. They use VAT as the scapegoat. They're trying to ensure that individuals buy into what their fight is. But particularly when you start pulling back and you look at the request that they were making to be part of Operation Vulindlela, to be part of the economic development, but also to look at the entire budgetary system as a whole and to kind of shake it down and build it from the bottom up. Do we actually understand what the issue is as a South African citizens, and do we understand it as South African audiences watching politics? Because media at the moment frames it as a VAT increase. The ANC claims otherwise. And we kind of sit as this weird juxtaposition where we're not too sure, because we've got people in civil society who are very much hurt, who are very much saying they can't deal with austerity measures. But at the same time, we're also asking ourselves, as you've said, all these political parties went and said this was a brilliant budget. Or let me not call it brilliant, it's good enough for where South Africa is, and it's good enough for the development that was going to occur. And the DA, similar to the ANC, they both care for the development of South Africa. The DA is big on job and growth and the opportunities that can exist. But it seems like there's a political maneuvering around this VAT increase. So just to explain it to South Africans who may be unaware, what exactly is the real issue? Was it truly VAT, or is there something deeper that we're not particularly seeing that's being spoken about behind the scenes?
Well, look, from what we're hearing from sources, right, there were conversations between the ANC and the DA to say the DA agreed with the budget, but they wanted some of the powers to be given to, I think, the Deputy Minister of Finance, right? They wanted, I think it's called dissolution, where then they have some sort of powers in KZN and I think in Cape Town as well. But they had considered, from what we are hearing, to say they're going to vote for the initial 2%. Based on those agreements that they would have, the issue that they had, the issue of the Bella Act was something that they were saying, if you cancel this thing, we'll vote for it. If you, the NHI thing, the expropriation bill, those were things that they were talking about. Had there been an agreement between those parties on what they would give each other if you vote for the budget, I don't think we'd have been sitting here. I'll make you also an example. If you take it then further, the EFF has said clearly they don't want the DA and then FF Plus in the GNU, and they would join the GNU. The question then that should rise is to say, if the ANC considers to that, would they join the GNU on the issue of the 0.5% or whatever percentage that you do? It's a very difficult situation because we've seen this in metros where mayors are removed because of one slight thing. I'll tell you now about agreements that were made here between the ANC and EFF and some of those parties. I think the minority bloc, that's what they call themselves, the minority parties. They are in a government of local unity. The agreement here was that they would form a voting bloc together, all of them, and the mayor would be given to the minority parties, hence why you had Tapelo Ahmad at some point from the Al Jama as a mayor of Joburg. At some point he left, and then there was Kabelo Kwamanda, who at some point left. So these are agreements that are done within these parties. We are not in a coalition, but we're a voting bloc. So we agree on issues of base to base. There's been an argument to say maybe when the ANC and the DA and all the GNU parties meet, there should be a coalition agreement instead of a statement of intent. Because in an agreement, this is the line that we follow. We agree to say this is what we are doing. But if you look at most of, I can say, the coalition, they are not necessarily coalition, they are agreements. Last, there was, I think, an adjustment budget in the city of Johannesburg, which the ANC wanted to pass. The EFF didn't vote with them. The HNSA didn't vote with them because of the issue of the 200 or 250 electricity thing that was that's still a major issue. But if you scrap that, then they say, okay, no, we'll vote with you. So I think if you cast the net wide, you look at Ekurhuleni, what happened in Ekurhuleni.
Yeah.
Dunga as the EFF chair and was MMC for finance was removed, and the ANC was saying, look, for us to work better, let's remove the EFF because we don't necessarily need them. Because if you put the numbers, and they don't necessarily need them. Action say the same. When they voted not long, they didn't vote with them. There's been a conversation to say they let them be removed. So there's not necessarily an agreement on these coalitions that you see. It's just a thing of on we're going to vote on issues of base to base on what agreements do we have. And this is why it's a bit challenging. I do not know how on the 21st of May, when they go back, I think in Parliament, how this thing is going to go. There might still be some lobbying going on. There might still be some issues that they need to agree on. You never know, because we are in uncharted waters. South Africa has not had a political party that did not have over a 50% majority. So we don't know what's going to happen. So we watch with interest. We watch with interest. If anything goes on what we see in the metros, I think we're still going to be it's going to be a very long 5 years. If it goes the way that it's going in these municipalities, like I'm making an example of Ekurhuleni, Joburg, and Tshwane. You look at Tshwane, the Action SA took over. There was an agreement that they should get a mayor, and the ANC would get a deputy mayor, and then the EFF will also get some MMCs there, and the speakers from the ATM. So it's very challenging, because all of a sudden these smaller parties now play, the so-called smaller parties, if I can say, they play a bigger role in this part, because you need them to vote with you. So if they say no, you still need to discuss with them. And I think we're going to be a very long 5 years to go to the national elections.
And you open the segue to a very important point around the role of the kingmakers, these smaller parties in the GNU. So we now hearing discourse about Action SA potentially joining the GNU, BOSA also being part of the GNU. That conversation happening at a base level, informally between the SG and the leaders of the SG of the ANC and the leaders of Action SA and Build on South Africa. But when we look at the way they voted when it came to the budget, it seemed as though that for Action and for BOSA, their role wasn't really to position themselves in a way where they take advantage of the chaos to join and be part of the GNU. It was to try spite and hurt the DA. Because we see that these parties are fighting not only for the same base, but there seems to be a change in the narrative where no longer are they actively outside of elections working against the ANC. It seems as though they are thinking at elections post the ANC as a factor. Hence why now these smaller parties, you see the rhetoric coming out of the DA, Helen Zille and John Steenhuisen talking about Action SA and Build on South Africa as the parties that passed the VAT and got it through, more than actually talking about the initial introduction by the ANC. So I want to know, as the GNU progresses and these smaller parties potentially enter, what does that do for the stability of the GNU? We heard the DA's leader, John Steenhuisen, recommitting that the DA is committed to the government of national unity, but in an environment where these smaller parties might try to squeeze out the DA, what does that do for the future of GNU politics? Does that open the door, like we saw those informal chats happening outside of Parliament, behind the toilets, behind the tent, behind the toilets, between the national chair of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, Julius Malema, and a few other leaders of other parties? Does that then open the door for these other parties to now enter the GNU? What does that do for the dynamics?
Let me maybe start with the issue of Action SA. Action SA has made it clear that, when I was speaking to Michael, he's made it clear to me that, look, at where the GNU sits now, it's unstable, and there would be no point for Action SA to join it, because as it sits, he said they have about 70% of the parties that are in the GNU are in Parliament. So they have clearly 70% majority. If then you then look at it, Action SA is saying, no, we're not going to join that. But if the number is significantly reduced, so on the assumption that maybe the DA leaves, Action SA has said, we would consider, but they've also been clear that we're not going to go into a GNU. We're going to go there if there's a coalition agreement. That's what they've been clear about that, to say, look, we are not actively looking to be there, but if the number is significantly reduced and we have an agreement of some sort to say, we write down whatever rules or the rules of engagement or how we are going to vote and all those things, then this would be something that they would consider to do. We then go to POSA. When I say to you, this thing of politics is a bit of dynamics. POSA here in Gauteng, in the legislature, they have an MEC position. You then look, the government in Gauteng is a minority government, where they're not more than 50, they don't have more than 50% votes. But there's lobbying from these other parties that are there to say, support us, let us support us, and all that. And when I spoke to Helen Zille last year, when there were those discussions to say, when you go to the government of provincial unity, they wanted proportional sharing in the instance. They said, whatever if you got 30%, you must get 30% of government. You must get that and that. And they wanted that here in Gauteng. But also the then government, or not necessarily government, the then leadership of the ANC in Gauteng, looks like they disagreed with that. If you remember, when the legislature was, when the current premier, Panyaza Lessufi, was put in office, when he was voted for to be the premier of Gauteng, the DA voted with him. The DA also got a deputy speaker under that arrangement, and then I think it was Refilensek, got a deputy speaker, and then the ANC got the premier and they got a speaker. So it'd been looking like they're going to have some sort of agreement. But if then you look at it, they didn't agree, because the DA was saying we need proportional sharing, and what you are giving us is not enough. They wanted more than what maybe the leadership of the then ANC was saying, look, let's give them this and then take this. You then go deeper. Helen Zille, when I spoke to her on that thing, on the briefing at some point, she said to me, it would not be a bad idea for the ANC and the DA to essentially work together in these Gauteng metros. And a lot of these guys here in Gauteng, as you would know, that they don't agree necessarily with the GNU. So it becomes a difficult thing. So then they opted for a minority government, which now is happening here in Gauteng. That's why then I was saying, if you look at how government is running now, or how things are happening, for instance, the DA is taking the ANC to court. If you look at it, the DA is in government, which means at some point government is taking government to court. We can't have that. We honestly cannot have that. And a lot of people are arguing that President Cyril Ramaphosa is actually played a checkmate on the DA, because if you look at the portfolios, like I think it's Dean McPherson, where he has to look at the issue of the expropriation bill. It's a DA, it's a person from the DA, but it's not a minister for the DA, it's a minister for all of us. You look at where Sifiwe Kwahube, the minister of, I think it's basic education, the issue of the Bella Act. These are acts that the DA said they would fight tooth and nail. But if you look at it, their ministers, or the ministers that come from there, have to be the one that make sure that they channel these acts, or passing to make sure that these things are put properly into place. So it's a challenging thing. It's a very challenging thing. You were talking about the toilet conversations in Parliament. It's negotiations. It's the issue of negotiations, and it's unfortunate that the country finds itself in this situation. But one then argues to say maybe it's good, because no one party can do as it pleases. But it's surprising to a lot. The DA had said if the ANC gets voted for by parties that are outside the GNU in this 0.5 increase thing, they were going to leave the GNU. They didn't. The ANC said if the DA votes against the 0.5 or the budget, they were going to essentially remove them. They have not. And they're speaking about let us have a meeting. We are going to have a meeting and talk about these things forward. Do we then say that the case that they launched, I think it was on Wednesday, the Employment
Equity Act, yeah.
Yes, that. Do we then say at some point that will also
break the GNU?
Break the GNU? Do we then say they're going to retract it at some point? You never know. We don't know. It's a difficult one. You can't predict it because there's something to give and there's something to take for all these parties.
Yeah, the moving parts are complicated. But, in my mind, I see the argument from the end of the DA, their strategic value in staying. Their donors. We've always heard whispers in political circles that their donors are the people that want them to stay in the GNU, that they're the ones that made the call to John Steenhuisen to say, listen, you're going to stick in this, and they're the ones supporting Helen Zille's authority within the party and saying, no, the DA will stay in the GNU strategically, fundamentally as the core of government renewal. That fervor coming there. But the ANC's end of the argument, sort of is rooted from this thing that if I was married to someone that threatened to divorce me 6 times a week, and only on Sunday when they're feeling holy do they decide they're not going to threaten to divorce me, is this really a stable relationship? And it's because of that I'm introducing this notion of what's the actual viability of Action joining, because it seems to me that an entry of Action SA, because obviously BOSA isn't yet part of the GNU, rises in its BOSA that's not yet in fully, but an entry of these guys added to that the EFF, because the DA is surely not going to stay in an environment where they feel it's hostile to them. I think, and you can tell us this, I think this is a more workable relationship for the ANC, because amongst ANC circles, people are fed up with the DA. They're fed up with the rhetoric of the DA. They're fed up of the DA always going on media and saying the ANC didn't get a majority. People in the ANC have been talking about that frustration. Is this a potential solution for the faction within the ANC that supports the GNU? Is this a solution for President Ramaphosa, perhaps? Because we always hear that, the longer the GNU stays, the more likely he is to remain in his position post 27. We don't know where 27 is. I want to say, will it be a Nazareth one? Will it be a Polokwane all over again? Or will it be a different situation, where a Mafikeng, where the president finishes their term?
Look, you are right. There are people in the ANC, especially in the National Executive Committee, that still do not agree with the ANC being part of the GNU with the DA. They don't agree. They feel it's a sellout position. They are there, and you can't hide that. But then they took a decision to say this is what they're going to do, to work with the DA. You look at Solema Paila, he's part of... what is this? SACP. SACP has said, because you guys are working with the GNU, are going to contest the elections alone. They are quite a serious strategic partner for the ANC. They've not agreed with it. The workers, COSATU is not agreeing. SATU, Tenusa, same, saying down with the GNU. But I think there's always going to be the question of the Phala issue when it comes to Action SA. They now going to court about this Phala thing. So it does not mean that the ANC goes with Action SA to the GNU, suddenly Action SA is going to be stopping Action SA. These parties are there representing their constituency. They're not going to stop to be whatever party that says leads the GNU. They're not going to stop that because they have their own constituency that they need to look out for. So I don't know if it will be a good thing, a bad thing. People are saying if because the ANC EFF and Umkhonto Wesizwe most probably represent the same constituency. They're fishing in the same pond. If they go into a coalition that's going to be good, I don't know. I don't know if that would be good. So I wouldn't want to speculate, because what MK, from what I was hearing, is that they say, no, if we are going to the GNU, we want president, or we want you to remove the sitting president. So there's always going to be litigious issues. There are always going to be people wanting whatever that they want. So I wouldn't sit here and say, I think this one and that one and that one is better to be in the GNU, or it's better to be in government together, because they all have issues amongst themselves that they might have as political parties that they don't agree on. Because it doesn't necessarily need, I remember in a coalition, we don't need to agree. We just need to work together. We don't need to agree. So it doesn't cancel my existence that I'm working with you. So I think we should be also careful around that, to say it does not mean that these parties are going to be stop to be what they are. Yeah.
What I do want to push is, recently there's been a lot of reports around Julius Malema and around the EFF, and particularly their comments regarding the GNU, but also their comments regarding a vote of no confidence. And what I find interesting about this is that I think it was the SG who's come out, or it's been reported, let me not necessarily say it was him because I don't remember it verbatim, but there's been conversation to say that there was belief in the ANC that the EFF as a partner would have been significantly worse than the DA. And I think the quote is something around, we know what the DA is, but we don't necessarily know what the EFF is and how they operate and what their motives are. And I think what you point to very clearly is, politics is about incentives, and politics is about ensuring that you're a beneficiary as party leaders, but also you ensure that your constituency is represented at an executive level. Why the question comes up is, the EFF is sitting in a very interesting place. They are sitting at the opposition. Of course, they were part of the Progressive Caucus when it initially started, and then we saw all that happened with the MK and the EFF and the souring of the relationships there. As you said, Malema's one push was around the GNU was, no, we don't want to work with the DA and FF+, and there was conversations about potentially not having Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the country. Where we sit now, it seems like the EFF is the one party that could be the biggest benefactor of the situation, because they can be the ones seen to have changed the country. Because where it seems like at the moment is we're a very stagnant country. There's not a lot of progress. There's a lot of squabbling. There's a lot of issues that remain present. And as I think you've pointed out very clearly, is that these parties, as much as they claim to be outwardly facing and say that they don't support each other, the DA, the EFF, and the MKP voted again with each other for the budget. The question is, at the moment, where the EFF sits, but also in terms of where Malema sits in the wider political scope, how does the ANC actively view that? Because it's a bit unclear as into whether or not they see it as a threat or whether or not they see it as a potential collaborator. Because as you said, the NEC has a very massive split, and that split's been spoken about quite extensively, about whether or not it should have been the DA or it should have been the EFF and the MKP. And we see this narrative come up time and time again with different politicians when they contribute to different issues, whether it's the Bella Bill Act, the NHI, whether it was the forming of the GNU, whether it was the budget as a totality. But there's still this weird question mark about, where does the EFF look to? What are they actually planning to do and where are they going? Because on one end, you are in opposition to both the DA and the ANC, which are parties that are suspected to be the two biggest parties into 2029. But let's make it more local. 2026, they're probably going to have a fair share, and you're going to have to cooperate. But there seems to be that they are the antagonist to every single party, whether it's MK, whether it's the ANC, whether it's the DA. So particularly from the ANC standpoint, as they sit at this weird interim, and particularly where there have been conversations about resetting the GNU and resetting the engagement, what is the view on the EFF? What is the role that the EFF is intending to play? But also, what is the concern from the ANC about the EFF that has them in this limbo, unable to necessarily do anything in government or get legislative power?
If you go back a bit, there was an agreement with some of the parties. I think it was UDM was also there as well. I'm not sure about PAC. I don't want to I would have to go back and check. But these parties were all in that progressive caucus that you're speaking about, with ATM, MK Party, EFF, and all that. They I think, just forgot the other parties, but they are I think the Colored Congress movement. I think so. I think they were there. These guys, there was an agreement that they would work together. I was speaking to the AFF national spokesperson just this week. The AFF has essentially said MK Party is a serious enemy to them. You look at the movement from the current Secretary General of the MK Party, Floyd Shivambu, Talimpofu, moving that side, Busiswe Mkhwebane, and all those people. But from what he told me is to say, look, when it comes to Parliament, when it comes to issues of voting, we do speak.
Okay.
Right? We are not friends with them, but we do speak on issues of Parliament and how to vote. So I wouldn't necessarily say there's a total cancel of that relationship. I don't know, in Parliament, at least that's what he said. If then you take that, you then think, okay, maybe there's a bit of a workable relationship there. I was speaking to Makasela Mzobe as well, the head of presidency in MK Party. He was saying, look, because I heard that the president, unfortunately, I was not working on that day, but when you listen to these things, that he was saying that EFF is the only party that is not white funded, and MK has come out to basically say that's not true, because they're not funded by white funded. So there are those still disagreements on issues with both parties. But then you talk about the uncomfortability of the ANC working with the EFF. I was with the Secretary General of the ANC, I think it was on Wednesday or Tuesday, where he spoke about that it would be more dangerous to have the EFF. It would be basically would fast track the demise. That was his words. So it would fast track the demise of the ANC if they had to put the EFF in the GNU. I will not tell you why, because I don't know. He didn't say why, but he said it would be better to work with the DA because they know what the DA basically stands for. Not in basically those words, but they know to say these ones, this is what we're dealing with, but these ones we don't know. So unless there's another NEC, maybe special NEC that would sit and discuss working with EFF or DA, maybe they come up with an agreement, and then we would know to say what are the uncomfortabilities of working with the EFF and what are the uncomfortabilities of working with the DA, and how do they maneuver around that those issues. The voice of the EFF, you have to admit, it's quite hard.
Yes,
it's quite hard, and a lot of people, Parliament, it looks like they were arguing now to say they're actually the official opposition, because you don't see the MK Party speaking quite widely about this thing. I mean, recently they just came out to say no, they were going to sit this VAT issue out. They didn't want to get involved in this. But if then you look at them, they're making stride in when it comes to these by-elections. They win them, and it's surprising to say, what are they doing that people actually, the ground level people, that they love so much? They just won an award now in KZN, I think, of the DA. I think this week also they won one. Then you then think to yourself, what's happening here? What's at play? Because we're talking about 2026. Are we then confident to say the parties in the GNU, because they're in government, they are going to be winning everything because now they're in government? I'm talking about a party now that in Parliament, people are arguing that it's not there. But when you go to the local guys,
it's showing up differently.
It's a total different scenario because they're winning. The ANC is not doing very well. The IFP is not doing very well. The DA, like I was saying now, they lost the vote to the MK. All these other parties that we speak about that in Parliament look to be more aggressive and more, they're fighting understand, for their constituencies, this 0.5 thing. They're not winning when it comes to these by-elections, especially in KZN. I don't want to confide MK to be a party that's
Regional.
It's just a regional party, because that's not true. They won a award, I think, in Northwest at some point. I think in Cape Town also they won an award. So the balance, would it be better for them to be in the GNU or just remain where they are and work the ground and make sure that 2026 comes and we've made the ground fertile and we are confident we can win? Because the MK party did not only just affect the ANC, the EFF as well, and the other parties. ATM now has said clearly that we are going to work with them, and when we're going to campaign 2026 local government elections, we're going to work together. Are there other parties that are going to do that? That are going to say, okay, well, let's just collapse into this MK party thing and see how it go. I think it's one party that we're not talking about a lot when it comes to 2026, to say what's at play for them, because you can hate him or love him. Former President Zuma, people love him.
Yeah.
The guy is something else. When he arrives in a place, people love him, and I think his party has quite a role to play in 2026, because already we're seeing they're winning awards. I don't want to say they're going to dominate and win everything, because I don't know. But the establishment of that party, I mean, it was just July, when December 16 was announced that they're going to be contesting elections, they got 14%.
Yeah.
14%.
In 4 months.
You understand? You can't undermine that.
Yeah.
When it comes to publicly, there's a lot of infighting and all that. But their argument is to say we're a party that was founded during elections. We did not have structures. There was not a certain way that the party does things. So now we're trying to stabilize it and make it an organization, because we formed it during elections. So the focus then was just the election. So now we're building now the party to say this is how things are going to work. They have a constitution now, they didn't have then. But one would argue to say you can't go to the IEC without a constitution. Maybe that's a constitution of some sort that I am not privy to. But now they have a constitution that you can go and read to say this is what we do, this is how we do things and all that. They've been saying the former president Zuma, or the president of MK party, is the glue to that party. If he was not there, then it would collapse. I don't know. I don't want to sit here and speculate to say that's going to be the case. But I'm just saying 2026 is going to be interesting for them, because they're going to be going to local government, and government locally, they've been winning these elections.
I wanted to jump on top of that, because I think a lot of people look at local government elections as a taste of what's to come in the national and provincial that comes 2 years later. But more and more we see a weird trend happening. Action SA dominated the local government elections of, I think it was 2022.
I think, yes.
In Gauteng.
2021, I think somewhere there, 2021.
Yeah, 2021, 2022. It was COVID years, so it's a little bit of a mixed match. But went on in the national to get, I think they got 3-4%.
Small.
It's a small compared to their seemingly ideological partner, the Patriotic Alliance, which got a much higher figure. Should people who are interested in seeing where the future of South Africa lies be looking at the local government elections as a taste of what could happen? Because it can be argued that no, these things we know historically are not a fair representation, because the people that turn out for national don't turn out for local. It's easier for people to parties to whip up their base and go vote because the turnout is so low. But also at the same time, we're living in a different situation. The ANC is below 50. It looks seriously now as if the second largest in parliament, the DA, if they just hold on to their current voter base, with the continuing decline of voter participation year on year, election on election, that they might actually grow whilst the ANC either stagnates or continues to decline. Should someone wanting to get a sense of where South Africa's future lies, maybe in preparation, I know we are years ahead, but in preparation of 29, be looking at the local government elections with bated breath? Or should they just be looking at the local government elections to see which parties are organized, which parties are able to contest, and which parties just, cruised through?
Look, the reality of things in South Africa is that people don't trust political parties. That's the reality. You can go wherever you want to go. People do not trust that this one is going to be better than the other one. During last year's elections, national elections, there was an argument that a higher voter turnout might have probably benefited the ANC. And I'm saying there were talks of that. I'm not saying if there was I'm not saying that, because I don't want to be. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the argument has been that.
Yeah.
But then you look. Let's maybe dive into maybe the parties that we see as black parties. The three. Maybe let's dive into the three. Let's dive to ANC. Let's dive to EFF. Let's dive to MK Party. A lot of people are arguing that we would vote for the EFF if they would remove their stance on issues of immigration, illegal immigration. They are saying that. You go to communities around Gauteng, and they feel that they don't want illegal immigrants, or they want immigrants, they don't want people outside the country, they don't want that. So what are the chances of those people voting for the EFF? The realistic chances of those people saying, who are saying, we don't want, you say, we want one Africa. They say, no, we don't want that. What are the chances of those people waking up in the morning and saying they're going to vote for you?
Very small.
0 to 9.
Right? You then go to the ANC. Every decline of South Africa the blame has been put of them. Right? Why would they then want to go and vote for it? That's the argument. Yeah. Then you go to the MK Party. The argument is that the president of the party was a president for 9 years, and they feel that he didn't do much. There can be a broad argument to say, what has he done? What did he build? How was it? There's a broad argument. But I'm saying, this is what people are saying he didn't do. There's that stuff that they say he didn't do. Why would they then wake up and go and vote for him? Right? Second argument is that there are things that people are saying that there was no whip that people could use to beat the ANC when it comes to the elections. And MK Party was the one thing that they knew that would hurt the ANC if they voted for it, right? It was a direct punishment for the ANC to say, you didn't do this, so therefore we're going to vote for this one, because that is a different thing now. Because MK Party is way different to the EFF. It's a different thing. And they're saying, I think on Sunday, the president of the MK Party was saying, look, we will take that part when it declines. We will come and take it and say, no, bring our things. He still believes that the ANC that is now is not the right ANC. But he's not saying the ANC shouldn't be scrapped. He's saying it's not the right ANC. So therefore, does it mean that if they lose power, we might see them working together? I don't know. And also, there's that question of 2027.
Yeah.
To say whoever wins that presidency, or whoever wins to be president of that party, it might be very interesting, because they're saying, and these allegations again, like I'm saying, I'm not saying it. I'm saying
These are the rumors.
These are the rumors that we're hearing in these corners, because there are corners. They're saying it is most likely that the current deputy president, if he wins, then we might see maybe some sort of working relationship with with a MK party come after 2027. So there would be essentially mean that DA is gone, because they would never work with the DA, and that thing that he doesn't want the DA, which I don't know because he's never told me that he doesn't want the DA. But if you looked at the MK 2024, it was a direct hit to the ANC, because it was like, we're going to use Zuma to punish you. You understand? Is that going to happen in 2026? I have no idea. I have no idea what would happen.
What I do want to question here is particularly this 2027 question, right? Because if you look at it holistically and you look at it from a very broad scale of politics, in reality, we've got a lot of former ANC people fighting for partnership with the ANC or to be somewhere near the ANC, right? If you look at it, Julius Malema was part of the ANC Youth League. He's trying to get back to governance through the ANC. MKP similarly is trying to get back to governance, and Zuma was head of the party there. Cyril Ramaphosa, maybe not as active as people would have wanted him to be from a historically how ANC presidents have acted. There's a question into what is going to happen in the build-up to 2027. And we're already starting to see those developments from what we understand. Paul Mashatile recently came out with claims of an assassination attempt, or claims that he was shot at. And then it was reported 3 weeks later. And some people have attested this being very similar to how Donald Trump was shot at. And that was kind of the thing that rode his way through to win the American election. It's interesting that 2027 is so far, and we're already starting to hear the squabbles now. Is there a reason why 2027 is championed as such a big year? Because it seems that there's external motivators? Or is it to say that 2027 is really the last time for the ANC to decide whether or not it's going to go left or it's going to go right? Because what we did see in the negotiations, particularly around the GNU, and what we continue to see in the ANC, is a very heavy socialist rhetoric without the implementation of the execution of socialism. So it's the signing of the Belleville Act, it's the signing of NHI, it's conversations around BEE, but there's never necessarily the results, the actual outcome, the executing of that legislative power. On the other hand, there's a very staunch opposition to working with the left because of the threats that we've spoken about, that these parties are very similar, they're fishing in the same pond. And the question is, here where we stand, and interestingly enough, I think it's been mentioned before, both of these two big parties are going into elections. The DA in 2026 has an election conference. The ANC in 2027 has an election conference. There's been thought around that both of these parties could try and influence these elections as a means of ensuring that they get better partners, they get better leadership, and they get people who produce a better relationship for these two parties. But particularly around the ANC, it seems like for the first time, all political parties are invested in this election. And there's quite a lot riding on that. So what do we make of that? And what do we make of the developments that are likely going to come up out of that? Because votes of no confidence, sure, that conversation is being had. And Malema has clearly pointed out that it's very possible, if the right people vote with him, that Cyril Ramaphosa will be pushed out. That'll put a massive question around who leads the country. He's claimed it's John Steenhuisen. I don't necessarily think that to be the case. But particularly where Cyril Ramaphosa has been very quiet, Panyaza Lusufi has said that there's a generation that ought to surpass him. Mbax has said, in the conversation around ANC leadership, it's just a conversation we're not having. We're trying to deal with what's happening now. What do we make of 2027? What is the conversation that is happening? Because we're already seeing to some extent at a local level that there's deployments into the different provinces by people who are saying that Luthuli House is controlling places like Limpopo and has their hands in different provinces. And the person who's been at the face of this has been Mbax. Similarly, we've got Paul Mashatile, who, as you've said, hasn't necessarily outwardly said that he's not in support of the DA, but there's been reports that he prefers a more left coalition. It seems that there's a very strong growing opposition between these two individuals. And it seems to be playing out quite significantly in the day-to-day politics that we see. So when we are viewing 2027, where do South Africans need to lie their ears to? Because it's very easy to be caught on the rumors. It's very easy to be caught on what's being said. But particularly from an internal point of view, what's the ANC's viewpoint on where they stand now? Because they've kind of play around with the idea of whether or not the election is a thing that they should talk about or they shouldn't talk about. But time and time again, it becomes a pressing conversation. And it seems like now, the further we get into the year, that conversation is beginning to ramp up significantly more.
Look, I think this is where we should start. The Secretary General is a very important position. A Secretary General is a very, very important question. If you are in that position, you are running the organization. You are running it. You are in charge. That's why Max always says, I'm in charge here. Understand? He's in charge of the organization. I hear a lot of people saying, if he goes presidency, he will lose. No one thought he was going to be Secretary General.
Yeah.
No one. He won. He won as the SG. The conferences that when he was president of the youth league, he won them. So he knows how to maneuver around conferences. I do not want to say to you he's going to win. I don't want to say that, but I'm saying the Secretary General position is a very influential position. There's a lot of things you can do with that position. Some claim that you can manipulate branches and have branches that to the conference that you want and have the people that you want so that they can vote for you. Basically, he can. I'm not saying he will, but I'm saying he has the powers to maneuver around. The deputy president doesn't run the day-to-day issues of the organization. I think that's the SGO, that's the Secretary General's office. So there's a DSG and the others that usually run the organization. Organizational matters are usually brought to them. So if he does contest, and he did say, I think we were in Cape Town, I think it was I wouldn't want to say a briefing because I wouldn't remember properly, but he did say in a briefing at some point, but that was after the rally that they had at January 8, where he was saying that he is aware that there are people who were meeting saying, let's support this person. Initially, if you support, there was a disbandment of some, at that time there was that talk of the disbandment issue to say disband Gauteng or not to disband, and people are saying disband, some are saying not. So he did say, look, we are aware that there are people who are saying, no, if you vote for this disbandment, or if you are for this disbandment, which means you are on this side, but if you are on this, if you are saying this, then you are on this side.
Yeah.
And he did say that he did hear that people were saying that he must be president. But he has come out to say, look, comrades, this is not the time to do this. As a party, we've lost. We need to focus on making sure that we grow. The issues of factionalism and lobbying people should not be what is at our focus now, which in a way I agree with them. I mean, if you want to grow, you need to then say, how do we better ourselves from what we got and we get something better? So that's a serious conversation. You look at Paul. I've spoken to people who are saying, here in Gauteng, basically leaders of Gauteng, who were saying, look, he's the current deputy president. He's from Gauteng. We don't see anything wrong with him being president. And there are people who are saying at that time that the fight against Panyaza at the time with Mbalula was not necessarily about Panyaza, but it was more close to those who were close to Paul or were seen to be close to Paul. I don't want to say Panyaza is more close to Paul. I don't know. I don't know their closeness and all that. But what you cannot take away is that Panyaza is popular. And people say he's a populist. You can argue that. That's another argument. You can label him the way you want to, but you cannot then say he's not known into politics. People here in Gauteng know him. Does he have an influence on the Gauteng regions, your Johannesburg, your Nkadimeng, your Tshwane? Does he have an influence to influence them to come and vote for? I don't know. I wouldn't know. Because from what I'm hearing is that others in the ANC think he's popular outside the ANC, but not inside the ANC. And if he had to contest maybe for a position, maybe he wouldn't necessarily win. But like I said, these are analysis of people who are inside the party. But we must also know that there's factionalism.
Yeah.
I spoke to the minister Mamuluko Kubai. He was the chair of the ETC of the ANC, and what they were saying is that the people in Limpopo were arguing that she should not be put in Limpopo because they felt that the issues of tribalism, where they feel there's a lot of Tsongas now, or Tsonga and Venda people that are running the show there. So she must. That's what they were saying. The people there. That's basically that was the topic around why she should not be put there. But also, if she was put there, or whoever was put there, it's strategic, because if you are then a deployee in that province, you can speak to people and branches to garner a bit of support. And they were saying they wanted Maruping there because the people in Limpopo are trying to, in a way, push her to be more closer to the people, so that maybe if she does contest, I don't know if she's going to contest, and then she's then a bit known. The names, like the names that I've seen of people being raised, I've seen names of Panyaza being raised as a Secretary General or Deputy President. I saw also Kubuzo Nchabeni. I saw some slate that was there saying Panyaza will be Deputy, Mbalula will be President, and then Chaveni will be Secretary General, and then Lamula second DSG, and all those things. So 2027, as we speak, if we then say, how interesting is it going to be? Who is going to be president? We know that Paul has said that he has ambitions of becoming president. Apart from him, I don't know anyone who's come out and said, I want to be that. Okay. I want to, there's a position that I'm fighting for. But I'm telling you just about the little few people that I know that they're saying they might want to lobby for 2027. Like I was speaking, the Minister Mamuluko, they were saying, look, she has ambitions of being a deputy president. She has contested for that position before. I think Oscar Mabuyane also at some point contested for deputy president. We have Ntumseni Ntuli, who contested for secretary general. We don't know. Gwede was saying is done.
Yeah.
We don't know who wants to contest for chair. So there's I think the ANC is going to hold an NGC in December.
Yeah.
I think after that, maybe we can then hear a few people also coming out to say, okay, this is what we are going to do. And also, you must remember, the provinces still also need to go to conferences. Maybe, because they are starting with regions now, regional will kind of give you an idea who is going to be in charge of the provinces. Maybe after the provinces, then it will look clearer who's likely to win. But politics are a different thing, totally different thing. I think if you look at Ace, I mean, was a Secretary General, was not even allowed to contest 2020, but he was a Secretary General, was out.
Yeah,
started his new party now, but he at some point was a very, very influential person in the ANC. So we might say, yeah, it's Paul. We might say in Bucks, and then gets there, then it's a
different person
who moves all these people. So it's I don't want to specifically say this one and this one will contest for this, and I think this person is going to win. It's a different ball game. But also, there's another question of saying, will those conferences of the ANC still have that same thing when they are out of power? Because does it matter who is when is there when they're out of power? If they go to, let's say maybe they are reduced a bit in the voting in 2029, would it matter who the president of the ANC is then? Because you the president of the ANC, it doesn't guarantee you'd be one of the country. Because if you go significantly down, maybe other parties will say, I know, we need to take this thing from you. There might be those conversations in 2029. That's why I'm saying that even if it's not like during Mbeki's time, Zuma's time, where you were guaranteed that if you win the ANC conference, you're going to be president of the country because of the numbers that they had then. Now the numbers are not there. So if they do decline a bit, like we're talking about the issues of the voter turnout, if there's not a lot of people that go to vote and they don't win significant numbers, would it still matter if you win the conference of the ANC? How's that going to be significant? Because you're not going to run the country. If, for instance, let's say whatever party takes a majority, maybe not a 50% majority, but takes a majority, maybe it's in a position where the ANC is now, where it has a significant, much more number than the other parties. Will it still matter who's the president of the party?
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you very much. We have to end it there due to time. I do want to ask this thing quickly in closing. There's been a very, very strong conversation about resetting relationships within the GNU. And I think you've spoken about it quite significantly, the difference between the letter of an intent and an actual coalition agreement. The question I want to ask and leave with everyone is, as it stands now, the conversation that we're heading to in 2 weeks, I think it's going to be 10 days or a week or so from when this comes out. Is that to say that the parties are coming together in the current form of the GNU to negotiate what's going forward? Or is the conversation to say that we are resetting from the start, as we are acting as if this is day one and we are finding new rules, new ways to govern? They talk about the cleaning house process, which has never worked or hasn't existed. What is that resetting looking like? What is that resetting intending to do for all the parties that currently are talking about it?
I think if you look at the GNU, the problem has been between the ANC and the DA.
Yeah.
The other parties have not had a problem. I'm not going to say they've never had some sort of maybe disagreements and stuff, but I'm just saying the big two have been the problem here. The DA at some point wanted them to be just a coalition between the ANC and the DA, which they thought would be much better than involving all these parties. And there's an argument to say this is just a coalition between the DA and the ANC, and the other parties are just there. If they go back to the statement of intent, you are speaking about the clearinghouse. I think the deputy president of the country, Paul Mashatile, is the chair of the thing. I think Helen Zille also sits there. I'm not sure who others from the DA sit there. I would struggle to understand what exactly that they would want to meet about that they're not clearing in the clearinghouse, because it then renders the clearinghouse useless.
Yes.
Because that's where they should be meeting and understanding each other and then agreeing on things there. So I wouldn't know if the meeting is solely going to be between the ANC and the DA.
Okay.
It would be difficult, but if it's a meeting of the GNU, I would argue that it's there's no point of having the clearinghouse, because the clearinghouse is there to deal specifically with those matters that parties don't agree on, and then they sit there, they agree, and then they take it to the party leaders and say, look, this is what we've talked about, this is what we've agreed on. So I wouldn't see the significance of them meeting all of them again as what's the point?
Yeah.
But if it's a meeting between the DA and the ANC, I think that is something different, because then maybe they were talking about how do we go forward. But I would, in a way, say I think a coalition agreement is more sustainable than the statement of intent, because it's clearly not working. If honestly you look at it, you think if we have an agreement, because if we are binded by an agreement of some maybe legal binding of to say maybe we work together on whatever issues, you don't vote against us and we don't vote against you, we don't take you to court, and we fix our things inside and we are legally binding to that, I think that is something else. But statement of intent is like me and you agreeing to say, Mchan, this is what we're going to move, and you don't agree with me, they say, yeah, leave it. You understand? There's no, I can leave it, I can leave anytime. But what I was saying to say that DA can walk out anytime that they want. So it's difficult. And also with the statement of, with how things are now, who's the big brother? Who can say we are kicking you out and now you must come in? It's because we are agreeing, all of us. So who has the right to say you can? When you must leave. We are chasing you out, and then when I come in and do that, it's difficult. I mean, some of my of the people that I speak to in Rise Mzansi, they were saying, look, on the basis of what has happened now, we're able to pass that fiscal framework, I think it was, without the DA.
Yeah.
And at some point, it might come to a turn where there are things that we can pass in Parliament without the ANC, right? So you then look at that to say, if they're already talking like that, say, no, we can pass things without you and we can pass other things without you. There's not necessarily a solid thing. If the DA maybe brings a motion of some sort that the ANC doesn't support and it cannot support someone else, and that passes as well. If you look at it the way it is now, they have 70%.
Yeah.
That specifically, I think it gives them a 2/3 majority. But I don't think there would be anything that they would
agree on collectively.
To say if we want something, maybe a legislature of some sort to be passed by 2/3 majority. It's good that they do have even a more than 2/3 majority, but if you look at it, would they be able, with the way that they are fighting now, would they be able to pass anything of that nature without even saying, let's caucus, let's see what I'm going to get, let's see what I'm going to get. For me, I just think that ordinary South Africans are the ones that are bearing the brunt to the political squabbles and people wanting to get what they want to get. So, yeah, I would close it there. I don't know what the meeting would be about, whether it's about a GNU meeting. For me, if it's a GNU meeting, I don't see it having a significant thing because there's a clearinghouse to sort such things. But if it's a meeting between the ANC and the DA, maybe there would be some sort of agreement that they come up with, and then they come and tell us to say, we've agreed to say this was not working, this is working, or we have agreed to keep it the way it is, or we'll have to hear.
Okay, cool. I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for giving us your time, your knowledge, and the information. This has been extremely helpful. And to everyone else, we hope you've enjoyed Born Free, another episode, another conversation, and we're moving South Africa forward. So